it's hard work. It's hard yakka. It's pretty standard for us to do a 12 to 15 hour day, 6 to 7 days a week. But when we take the time to stop while we're going hell for leather trying to feed animals and, get pigs back to where they're supposed to be, it is just that I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. At Echo Valley Farm, pigs are pasture raised in small groups and rotationally grazed in a combination of open grazing grass country and native forest bushland. Farmer Randal Breen believes this results in happy, healthy pigs that are free to express their inner piggyness. Randal, how are you?
Good, mate. Good.
So it's good to get you on the show. It sounds like a pretty idyllic location there. Tell us about where you are.
Yeah, cool, mate. Well, we reside on unceded lands of the Bundjalung Nation of the Githable people, which is just over the Great Dividing Range in southwestern Queensland, in the Goombra Valley. So yeah, we're on a 650 acre property here in the Goombra Valley, and yeah, beautiful country.
What's so great about that region for what you're doing?
I think it is, so it's a temperate area where what would be described as a brittle tending, if you look at the holistic farm management. So not a lot of rainfall and beautiful, rich volcanic basalt soils, so very fertile. At least it was until industrial farming got a hold of it, but we're in the process of healing all of that.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the farm and what you're growing.
Yeah, awesome. So we run what we describe as a stacked integrated farming system. So we're running a whole range of animals and farming practices that we're trying to run symbiotically, that work in harmony with each other. And our core focus is about healing the landscape. So trying to build soil, revive the soil back to its former glory, and build a rich and abundant landscape. And so yeah.
So tell us what you have on the farm and sort of the role that each one plays.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so our predominant animals are poultry for egg production, cattle for stud stock and beef production, and our pigs. And their pigs' core role is landscape rejuvenation and fertility, moving fertility around our landscape, because they're such intensive, and so they're processing a lot of food waste for us. And so those guys all work in partnership with each other, constantly moving across the landscape in a holistically managed system.
Is there challenges with this system?
Absolutely. Yeah, as you may have worked out, it's really a lot of labour is involved, because if you can imagine trying to move fences and livestock and shelter and all of those sorts of things, water across the landscape constantly, it can be pretty labour intensive. So a fair bit of time involved. But what is amazing is seeing the response of the landscape once we start to, we use the concept of being a patient, attentive observer. So we're using these animals and then attentively observing it, what the result is to our landscape.
Tell us a little bit about those results. What have you seen change? What are the benefits of this system?
Yeah, I think the critical thing is what the big thing we see change is the diversity coming back into our landscape. So, this farm is sort of split between remnant vegetation, which is lovely and really rich in diversity, but the other half is previously conventionally farmed land. So it was under full tillage and a lot of chemical use in order to grow monocultured crops. And so we've been on the journey of trying to return that back to a rich and diverse landscape. And what animals do that nothing else we've seen can do is build that diversity. And so in our 10 years of being on the farm, the diversity is just remarkable. So diversity of plant life, and with diversity of plant life comes diversity of wildlife.
I want to explore everything that you're doing shortly, and specifically get into the life of the pigs on the farm. But tell us about growing up. Where did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play for you?
Yeah, cool. Look, I grew up in a town called Bundaberg, sort of central coastal Queensland, and yeah, we had a very simple life. Food probably didn't play a huge role, to be honest. We were very conventional, you know, meat and three veg type family. You know, mum and dad were feeding four kids on a budget, and so it was, you know, it wasn't until later in our life where when Janita and I got married, and then we started to explore food that the whole world was really opened up to us.
Well,
So yeah.
why did you become a farmer?
That's a really good question. My mother's side of the family were in farming, and so as a kid, I got exposed a lot to the farming world and really loved it, and that was an aspiration for me as a kid. But it probably wasn't something that was fostered in me. You know, like there was that classic mindset that, you know, unless you inherit land, farming isn't really an option. And so I moved away from it. I moved into community work. Actually, did a degree in social science, and we're working um, in the cities, working with marginalised young people, and that's where I met. You know, Janita and I were working together doing community work, and then we just sort of fell into it. To be honest, we bought a small property and then started exploring regenerative agriculture, and then we made a decision to buy the property that we're on and just go. We fell in love with the concepts of, and what's really interesting is, you know, coming from a community development type background, the concepts of regenerative agriculture just made perfect sense. You know, building community dynamics within the natural world, we were able to actually apply some of those skills to building a rich and diverse community within our farming practice.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you have any stories of what it was like trying to get the farm up and running?
We're endless stories, mate. We call ourselves braille farmers. So we're feeling our way. So often with braille farming, there's plenty of mistakes and plenty of stories. But one of the, you know, the very start when we got started, we started with 250 chickens on a tiny acreage, and then we bought this farm. And so what we had to do is we had to move these guys to this new farm, and we'd converted an old box trailer into a chook pen that could move around the landscape with these 250 chooks in it. You know, we'd cut the floor out and put mesh in so all of their powerful chicken manure could fall through onto the pasture. But we had to move these guys onto our new farm, so we literally and we were about, I suppose it was 2 hours drive away from where we are now. And one night, we when the girls went to bed, we closed the doors on this mobile chicken trailer, hooked it up to the tow ball, and drove over the Great Dividing Range onto our new farm. And we even stopped for petrol along the way, which was hilarious. You know, we pulled into this service station with this. You imagine like a little tin house sitting on top of a box trailer. We'd got a 24-hour parking permit to drive this trailer across. We'd failed to disclose to the main roads that there'd be 250 chickens on the inside. We pulled into the service station and all these chooks peering out, wondering what the hell was going on. But so that was the start of our craziness, and yeah, from then I suppose it's been a constant journey of working with animals and yeah, wins and losses. But yeah, we've had some exciting events along the way, that's for sure.
Tell us about the introduction to pigs to the farm and what that was like.
Yeah, so the pigs weren't really on our radar as an animal to include in our farming system until we started to identify the huge amounts of, firstly, our landscape, the nutritional loss that had happened over the 120 years of white colonial farming. And we knew that we needed to try to revive that. And there was pockets of our farm that sort of sat between the farmland and the remnant vegetation that was intensely degraded, and there was a lot of weeds coming in, lantana and bits and pieces, and it wasn't really usable for anything. So we couldn't crop it for vegetables, say, and we couldn't. There was no real feed value for the herbivores like the cattle, and so we were scratching our head of how can we utilise this area, and how can we help to start to restore it back to what it used to be like. And then the other thing we were seeing was the amount of food waste within our food system. We were just astounded with how much stuff was being wasted in the broader food system. And that's where we fell upon pigs, really. We started with two little white pigs that we got from a piggery, an industrial piggery that we bought as weaner pigs, and they came here, and they probably did it a bit tough, to be honest, initially, because they had to adjust to the outdoor lifestyle. But even just with the first two, once they hardened to and just enjoyed digging and mucking around in the timbered country on our farm, high up on our landscape, and then we started to access some of the food waste from food manufacturers in Brisbane. It took off from there, to the point where now we have in excess of 150 pigs on the farm, and we've developed we've worked with breeds now that are more adapt to an outdoor free range lifestyle. And what they have done is, in terms of reviving our landscape and diverting food from landfill, has been quite remarkable.
How different is it working with pigs to other animals?
It's I'm sure you've heard we talk about the fact that if you think you're becoming a person of influence, just try telling a pig what to do. They are the most remarkable animals, and they are creative, they are imaginative, they are inquisitive. So they can be incredibly challenging in terms of from a management point of view. Both they're hard on the landscape, they're hard on fences, and that's because of their uniqueness as an animal. And so over time, we're slowly learning how to connect with the piggyness of the pig, and utilise those tools as a resource. And so I guess the big challenge with pigs is its management. So you need to be moving them regularly across the landscape, because it's a fine line with pigs between a landscape and a moonscape, because they're so keen to dig and explore, and they're what we describe as a pioneer animal. They turn up like, say, what a lot of people call weeds, plants that turn up to fix a problem. Pigs turn up and create an event, and they dig and wallow and do all those sorts of things, which is incredibly beneficial to a landscape if it's managed effectively. And
You mentioned the breed changing a little bit. Tell us a bit about the breed that you do have on the farm and why you've gone in that direction.
Yeah, so we looked at a whole heap of different pig breeds, and we realised that in our system we needed to sort of look at the more heritage line breeds, and we tried all sorts. But what we ultimately landed on was the Duroc breed. So it's a breed that was developed in the US. And what's really good about them, they're a sort of a reddy brown colour, so they're really good outdoors. They've got coloured skin so they don't sunburn. But they were sort of developed as the first pig out of when pigs were preference for their lard production rather than their meat, and these pigs were developed specifically for their meat. And so these guys are quite remarkable animals in terms of laying down intermuscular fat, and not getting overly fatty, so you can get a really lovely fat cover on the pigs. But some of the more heritage breeds can be challenges managing how much fat they lay down, and so the Durocs are a lot. They were the best in terms of the feed sources that we're feeding these guys, and the way that they've performed. They're a beautiful animal. We love them.
You briefly touched on some of the feed for them. Take us through the feeding program. What are the pigs eating?
Yeah, cool. So, obviously we bought pigs into our our farming system based on something we identified within our observing how much food waste there is within our broader food system. So every week we do what we call a yield stream run in through Brisbane and collect food waste. So we call it yield stream because we don't want to call it waste, because it's actually it's a yield. It's a product that has only become waste because our system hasn't identified a use for it. And so we pick up vegetable waste from food wholesalers, and we pick up a lot of brewers' grain, which is a spent brewers' grain, which is a barley porridge that is the byproduct of beer making. And so they're the two things. And we bring home around 5 tonnes per week on the back of our truck. And all of that, yeah, it's remarkable, and it just doesn't. So in our time, we've diverted thousands of tons of food waste that would have otherwise ended up in landfill. And what's beautiful is you put it through these pigs. We call them our four-legged compost bins. Like they create perfect compost in 24 hours. It's remarkable. We feed them this stuff, and we add to the brewer's grain. There's a few things missing in it in terms of nutritionally that's been extracted for beer making, and so we get a concentrate made, which fills up. We got the brewer's grain analysed and worked out what it was missing nutritionally for the pigs, and so that then gets mixed with the brewer's grain, and that becomes their ideal diet. And then they get all the food waste, which is just an added treat. The other thing, we work with a sauerkraut manufacturer in Brisbane, and we get all of their waste, cabbages and sauerkraut. So these pigs have the best gut health out of any pig, I reckon, in the world. And they love it. Yeah, we get this garlic sauerkraut from time to time. So if anything in the manufacturing process goes wrong, if it gets too soggy or whatever, we get it back. And they particularly love the garlic sauerkraut. And so the benefit is we're putting this into these guys, and it's working as a wormer and a health tonic for these guys. So they're pretty bloody healthy.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Take us through the life cycle of the pig in the farm, and how big do you grow them before they go to market?
So our pigs live their entire life outdoors. So we have some beautiful big sows who they spend their time free ranging in our timbered country, hanging out with our boars. Big Monster is our main boar. He's a beautiful purebred Duroc. And so, the gestation of a pig is 3 months, 3 weeks and 3 days, which I find astounding. And those pigs literally will farrow either in some farrowing shelters that we've built, or literally in the forest. It's amazing to watch a sow build a nest to farrow in. Like they'll go out and you'll see them 2 to 3 days prior to farrowing. They'll be collecting branches and straw and grass and all sorts of things, and they'll build these just immaculate little nests that they'll then lie down in and give birth under a tree or under a shrub, or they particularly love burrowing in under a big old lantana bush, which they've built this nest in. And they'll give birth. Durocs don't have huge litters, usually between 8 and 10, which is really good, in a outdoor setting, that it's not putting too much demand on mum to produce excess milk. And so then those little piglets spend 8 weeks with mum. We'll then wean them off mum when mum's had a gutful. It's quite remarkable. They're more than happy at 8 weeks to say, righto, you take them from now. And so then those pigs, then we usually try to have 3 to 4 sows farrow at the same time. We wean them all at the same time, and then that becomes a community group of, say, 30 pigs that then they'll spend their life together as a growing group, and will grow through to a market weight. We're trying to produce a carcass of around 60 to 70 kilos. So there's sort of, I guess, 80 kilos live weight, and those guys will and that's done slow. That they spend their entire time on either a cover crop, which we'll plant a diverse cover crop of all sorts of mixed species plants that they can graze on, or on our grass country, and then fed our waste stream feed. And so it takes a bit longer. The industrial food system sort of turns pigs off at that weight about 20 weeks. And we could be 30 to 40 weeks before those guys are ready for processing. And we just find that just adds not only the diet, but that slower grown, lots of activity, lots of muscle movement. They're ranging over, 1 to 2 hectares, moved every 21 days onto a new paddock. So they're constantly moving and active. And I think that just adds the most to the dynamic flavour and taste of the meat.
Tell us a little bit about that. What sort of impact does the lifestyle and diet have on the end product? And tell us a bit about what that end product is.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess the big thing you notice is the colour of the meat. If you've ever bought industrial pork, it's quite pale. And, they call it the other white meat. Well, our meat is deep, almost of a beef colour. Not quite as dark red as that, but it's definitely a deep red colour. That comes through that muscle movement, I believe. And what that does to the flavour is quite unmistakable. I do think that sauerkraut adds to flavour too. We're on quite heavy dark soil, and I think that I think the terroir, the flavour of the land, that deep heavy black soil adds to a nice deep rich flavour to the meat. They're digging in that every day, pulling up roots, and adding to the flavour. And so then, our animals at processing weight, what's really beautiful is we've added to our system. We've just actually built an on-farm boning and packing room. So our animals head off to a small local family abattoir and then come back here the next day and hang in our fridges, and we cut the meat up and turn it into the products that we process. So we're trying to take control of the whole supply chain, from the food to the landscape to the animal, and then the final product.
Well, where does the product end up? What market are you selling it into?
Look, our main market, we're trying to feed families. That's our core values. So we run a CSA program, which is a community supported agriculture, where we have families that sign up as members of our farm, and every month they get a box full of products that we produce. They come to the farm. They're involved in the process of what we do here. So 4 times a year we have a seasonal farm tour, and our CSA members come here. They help us plant trees and do all sorts of things, and engage with those animals that ultimately feed their family. And so that's our main one. We supply some restaurants and cafes and other bits and pieces, and people can buy our product direct from an online shop that we run. And do a weekly delivery. But ultimately, our core vision and our focus is about building that community-supported agriculture network and really deeply engaging in relationship with the people we feed.
That's amazing. Who's the cook in the family, and is there a signature pork dish in the house?
It is definitely my wife. On occasions I'm allowed to ruin a good pork steak. But look, we eat a lot of pork. A slow cooked in our smoker collar butt is pretty hard to go past.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is pretty phenomenal.
What's the best sort of pork dish you've had, using your product? Was it at home, or was it somewhere else?
Yeah, look, there's what's so amazing about pork is its versatility. We went to speak about our farming practices in Italy at the Slow Food Festival last year in Turin, and eating some Italian small farm produced copper is pretty hard to go past. But also, but then you've got a pork loin chop that's cooked on a barbecue is pretty remarkable too. But I reckon our pork eaten with friends is a pretty unmistakable, pretty hard to go past meal.
You're doing amazing things up there. What's some of the challenges for you in sort of running what you do, and what's the day-to-day like?
Yeah, so we do big hours. It's a constant, trying to manage the needs of our landscape, our livestock, and our community is pretty challenging. So yeah, between Janita and I, we're doing some big hours in terms of running the farm. I think the challenges at the moment, we're seeing such volatile climate situations going on at the moment, and that's a really hard thing to manage. In our 10 years of being on the farm here, we've had rainfall volatility that is quite remarkable. We've had 187 millimetres of rain total for a year in 2019, the worst drought in history. To last year, we had almost a metre and a half of rain that fell in the year, and then this year we've dropped right back to 350 mil. So that sort of climate volatility makes it extremely difficult to manage the landscape and the product out the other end. And so trying to educate people around what it means to be eating seasonally and locally is challenging. But yeah, we've got a great team around us, in terms of our CSA members and that sort of thing.
You had an extraordinary move into farming. How has it changed you?
Oh, it has changed me, remarkably. I think when you get an opportunity to deeply engage with your landscape and your country and your animals, so we talk about building a deep and intimate relationship with our landscape, with our animals, and with the people that we feed. You can never see any other way of being after that. I know that sounds a bit woo woo, but it's quite remarkable. Our First Nations people understood that. They understand. They talk about the fact that they are country. They're not on it or in it, but they are part of it. And in our short period of time of seeking to deeply engage with country, it's just quite remarkable. And that's something that will never ever change. Once that starts to happen, it's changed us for the better.
Well, you're doing extraordinary things there at Echo Valley Farm. But what do you love about what you do?
Oh, every bit of it. I think it's those things. It's every single day we get to walk out and engage with the landscape that we're on and with those animals that we're working with, and those deep relationships are just quite remarkable. They're life changing, and it's hard work. It's hard yakka. It's pretty standard for us to do a 12 to 15 hour day. 6 to 7 days a week, but when we take the time to stop while we're going hell for leather trying to feed animals and get pigs back to where they're supposed to be rather than digging up the back lawn, taking that time to stop and look around and literally smell the flowers, it is just that I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Well, Randal, it's extraordinary what you're doing, and an absolute honour to have you on the Crackling today to hear just a part of your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Awesome, mate. So glad to be part of it. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to tell our story.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.